Marz, MTEL, round one. You boys ready?
Yes, sir.
Chat, you ready? All right, let's get it. Round one, topic one, Manu versus Iverson. Who is simply the better player? I don't know how you guys do this, but I'm going to do it my way. Marz, for round one, topic one, we're going to start with you. Time starts when you do.
I think Manu versus Iverson is it's about as much a philosophical discussion as it is a basketball one. I think a lot of the way you value basketball comes down to who you think is the better player. For example, how valuable of a player is someone who needs to be your best player in order for them to be at their best? If you can't win with them as your best player versus someone who can win as a number two, but probably won't be as good as a number one. Is someone who is a better floor raiser who can make bad offensive teams mediocre better than someone who can make good offenses great? Like, and I'm not saying these are the definitions of Manu and Iverson. I just think this conversation opens up a whole can of worms on how you value the game of basketball. But I'm going to start off with some numbers as I always do. And then round 2 and 3, I'm going to talk a lot more about eye test. But from 05 to 2010, with the big three on the court, the Spurs had a net rating of +5 in the postseason. That means they outscored teams by 5 points per 100 possessions. When it was just Tony and Tim together without Manu Ginobili, they lost. From 05 to 2010, a time where they had 2 chips, many deep postseason runs, they were losing their minutes with Tony and Tim without Manu Ginobili. When Manu Ginobili was on the court with Tim Duncan, they had a +6.7 net rating. When it was Manu Ginobili with Tony Parker, they had a +5.5 net rating. When it was Manu just by himself, they had a +1.44 net rating. Now, I'm not saying on-off is the be-all, end-all of who's the better player, but I do think when these numbers all point to one thing, this guy on the court equals my team is good, that's a good place to start this whole conversation. And I'm going to get a lot more deep into the philosophical discussion between the two. But long story short, Manu on the court equals Spurs equals good.
MTEL, time starts when you do.
All right. That was a good intro. This is how I'm gonna start. We're gonna start off by talking about how Manu and Iverson really played 2 different roles on the court. I feel like your role on the court matters a lot in this conversation. We're talking about a first option compared to a debatable second, third option, depending on what day it is. Iverson was an 11-time All-Star. We know he won MVP. He went to a finals, had to play against a debatable super team in the Los Angeles Lakers in the 2000-2001 season. He averaged 30 points per game 5 times in his career. In the 2000s, there were all eras to do it, and that's actually pretty tough. He's a career 27 point per game scorer, 6 assists per game, 4 rebounds per game, 4 turnovers. On 41 minutes played, Manu was a 2-time All-Star. Obviously, we know he came off the bench, kind of unfair in his position, but we all know how good he was as a talent. So, I mean, he could have still made more, in my opinion. He averaged 14 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 turnovers a game, and he averaged a steal, and that's in 26 minutes of play. Iverson almost played the whole game, and a lot of the other stats that you can look at is very comparable for them. In the turnover department and the steals department, I think that's kind of interesting. I'm gonna start there though.
Marz, topic 1, round 2, on you.
I'm gonna bring this back full circle to the original question I asked. Is the better player a floor raiser who can make bad offensive talent mediocre, or the player who can make good offensive talent maximize and really become elite level offenses? For example, when we look at Allen Iverson, a big percentage of his shot diet was mid-range jumpers, tough jump shots, contested jump shots, which respectfully he just wasn't very good at making. Now, I could bore you with the numbers and tell you in Philly he was shooting 36% on 2-point jump shots from 01 to 06, but I don't really need to do that. Allen Iverson wasn't very good at shooting jump shots and making jump shots, but he took a lot of them, and that really brought down his efficiency. And those shots are very valuable when you're on bad teams and they need your offense. They need it. But once you get on better teams and there's better options than you taking a 20-foot jumper 6 seconds into the shot clock, that's where I think you start seeing the separation between him and Manu Ginobili. And I know some people are going to be thinking that, well, Allen Iverson had to do it. He was on the Sixers. He wasn't on a team that had offensive talent, so that's why he took those tough shots. And I was like, okay, so let me look in Denver. What was he doing in Denver? You might be surprised to find out 65% of Allen Iverson's shots in Denver were 2-point jump shots. He shot 41% on those 2-point jump shots. That is the issue I have with Allen Iverson as a player. he takes a lot of bad shots, and even when he's on good offensive teams, those issues really start to rear their heads, and you start realizing this contested jump shot when a 40% wide open 3-point shooter is there becomes detrimental to my team's offense. Manu Ginobili didn't have those problems.
MTEL, Cook.
Yes, sir. All right, so we're talking about the floor racing options. I can respect that where you're coming from with that, but what I would say to combat that, I think it's easier to play with all-time talents compared to what Iverson had to work with. His second best scorer when he went to the finals that same year in the playoffs, his second best scorer averaged 14 points per game. Aaron McKee, very solid. I'm not saying 14 is bad, but besides Allen Iverson, that's the only player on the team that shot over 30% from the three-point line. He had no floor spacing out there. It was really just, if Iverson wasn't scoring, it was basically Rouse. I'm like, it was bad out there for him. So I'm like, the scoring conversation is kind of interesting with him because we all know the scoring load was put too much on his shoulders, which I think then in turn hurt his efficiency. Yes, you can say he played with a better team later on in his career, but then again, my debate would be that's later on in his career. I don't think Iverson was as good as a player then when he was on Denver. By the time he got there, I feel like we would have seen him play with talent levels that strong when he played in the 76ers jersey in his prime. I think he would have just been more efficient. I feel like efficiency conversations really depends on the type of team you have around you, and when you have no floor spacing, you have nothing to work with. Really, except just you or just hoping. I think that's what made it easier for Manu. Manu played with a top 10 all-time player. He played with another guy who was also a top 75 all-time player. I mean, I just think it's easier that way.
Marz, round 3 on you.
Yeah, 0-1 is a lot of the argument for AI, rightfully so. That's a team that frankly shouldn't have been in the finals in terms of talent, but they made it. They were an elite defense, and the offense was very poor. Allen Iverson was able to keep them above the hump offensively. I respect that completely. He did get outplayed by Vince Carter, Reggie Miller, and Ray Allen in all 3 of his series leading up to the finals. But we still respect the process it took to get there. But I think when it comes to Manu Ginobili, I think I would be not doing my job correctly if I didn't bring up the fact that one was a strong positive on defense, and one is maybe one of the worst defenders we've ever seen. Allen Iverson was limited by his size. He was probably 5'11", 160, gambled way more for steals than anyone I've probably ever seen. So obviously everyone likes to point to 4 steals titles. But when you gamble every single possession and end up forcing 4 turnovers a game, you end up bleeding more value than you're making up with the 4 steals. Manu Ginobili was a better man defender. The motor was higher. He didn't give up possessions on possessions like Allen Iverson did. Defensively, the gap was clear as day. Now, I've always harped on the fact that I prefer players' value when they're on better teams because I think that's what's more important to me. I don't really care about what you can do on a team that has no shot of winning. And I think Manu Ginobili, in terms of being able to play off the ball, as he was a 38% three-point shooter, being able to continue on advantages when they've been created, attacking closeouts, commanding closeouts, being able to make quick decisions, quick reads, all of those things. Even when he gets into the paint, Allen Iverson was deadly in the paint, but unfortunately, he would stop short very often because he liked taking jump shots. Even when he had spacing in Denver, he liked taking jump shots. That was just the issue I always had with Allen Iverson.
MTEL, last round of this topic. Finish him.
All right. So yes, I understand the points that you're making with Manu, and I know this is really an uphill battle to really try to talk about. I feel like it's a little unfair in a sense when you look at it. I don't know no real way to comparably just look at the two, other than to bring up teams. Manu just played on a way better team than AI has ever played on. We're being honest. You could really debate the Spurs of being a super team from an all-time standpoint. I don't really like using the super team conversation too much because I feel like we call too many teams a super team nowadays. But if I was to look at a team and say a respectable team to say you could possibly put in that conversation, I would say the Spurs. They did win 5 titles in the Tim Duncan era. They also really went to 6 finals, and Tim Duncan could have had just as many wins as Michael Jordan. Yes, he had Manu on the team to help with that. Manu was a part of that. They had the fact that Manu could come off the bench and their team still was that good. I feel like it's another point to bring up of how good their team was. I mean, he played with a Hall of Fame coach and Greg Popovich. We know that's probably debatable a top 5 best head coach of all time. He just had more to work with over the course of his career, and the fact that he really mostly really just played on one team for the most part his whole career. And AI, he had some off the court stuff. He had some practice issues. He had a lot of stuff that kind of held him back. I feel like at times unfairly, but I just feel like he had more on his shoulders, and that's why he's just better.
Run those polls. Round 2, we have Steph and Draymond. Steph being Steph Curry and Draymond being Draymond Green versus Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Which duo complements each other better? This is a very long topic and would be easier to build around. Marz, you went first in round 1. Mtel, you're going to kick this one off. The time starts when you do.
All right, so in this conversation, I have Jokic and Murray. I went with them because the conversation was about today. Like I asked Ron, was this a conversation about all time? But since it's a conversation of today, I feel like it's easily got to be Jokic and Murray. I think even some of the flaws that we're seeing of like the decline of Steph Curry recently, even as far as, just using the Olympics, as much as people want to say, oh, Curry was cooking, if you really look at it, Curry was essentially doing the same thing he does in Golden State. It just looked worse. Like he was playing off the ball, and outside of 2 games, he looked terrible. I think that is going to be something that's going to carry into the regular season. We're talking about a smaller sample size. Now you're talking about an older Steph Curry. I believe he's like 35, 36. I'm not exactly sure how old he is. But you're talking about an older version of him and Draymond. We're talking about them in their prime. I actually would be on the exact opposite. But since we're talking about today, I have to just be honest. Like, both of their careers pretty much almost look cooked. Like, not saying Steph looks bad or anything, but 82 games and then a playoffs, and then you have to make it to the finals, and then you also have to try to be a winner. That's just harder just to ask for them to do in terms of just building around them. I don't even really have to stick too much on Jokic and Murray. It's easier to build around them. We already see a team that has a system that works. If the cat room wasn't killing them right now, and they got to keep the same team they already had with Aaron Gordon, with KCP, with even other players that they lost, that same team probably would have still won another championship back to back. But the cap room is the only thing hurting now.
Marz, rebuttal.
This is why I say Ron's the L host, because I asked this man when he gave me the topics. I said, I'm reading the chat right now. I said, the Steph and Dray question is peak, right? Ron then responded to me saying, yeah. So finding out that apparently he told Mtel it was about today, this man Ron be lying to us. So I'm a debate what I was told. It was peak. So I'm gonna go with peak because that's what I researched. That's what I looked up. That's what he told me. So I'm gonna say Draymond Green and Steph Curry on the court in the postseason from 2015 to 2019 had a plus 14 net rating. Now I know what some people are gonna be thinking. They had Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson. Spoiler alert, that was without Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson on the court. That was just those two. With any alignment of role players you wanted to put out there, Iguodala, Sean Livingston, Quinn Cook, Jonas Repka, whoever you want, plus 14. And from 15 to 24 in the regular season and the postseason, without KD and Klay Thompson on the court, plus 10 net rating. From 15 to 24 in just the postseason, plus 12 net rating. This is a duo that no matter what situation you put them in, they produce winning moments. The reason for that is because they complement each other on both sides of the ball. The issue with Jokic and Murray is they complement each other on one side of the ball. Where Steph falls short on defense, Draymond Green makes up for that on offense. I mean, where Steph falls short on defense, Draymond Green makes up for that. Where Draymond falls short on offense, Steph makes up for that for Draymond. That's what they do. They complement each other on both sides of the ball. Where Draymond can't shoot, guess what? Steph Curry can run around off the ball, draw 2 to him, and Draymond Green can make decisions. Where Steph gets 2 on the ball in a pick and roll, 4-on-3 for Draymond Green to capitalize. When Steph gets beat on the perimeter, Draymond Green is there to slide over on defense. That complementary part is why they're better than Jamal and Jokic.
Ron indeed. Not even showing up to work today and getting dragged in the chat. I appreciate it. I'm all for the Rons. All right, MTL, back to you, brother.
All right. I'm sorry, Marz. Like everything about this is cooked. I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna work through it, man. So with Jokic and Murray, since that's the only way to fairly bring it up, I guess, all the time. But I'm gonna adapt to that. What I will say is that with Jokic and Murray, we saw that their style of plays meshed so well that they were able to create new types of offensive schemes that we really have never seen before. From them just doing normal pick and rolls to the idea of them to be crazy enough to try inverse pick and rolls. Never seen that before, and I haven't seen that before in basketball. If it happened before, hey, L me. But I haven't seen that before. When Jokic started getting the picks from Murray and they started playing an offense off of them as Jokic being the point guard essentially, in those situations. We just seen how unstoppable that looked when they pulled that out. They really have never like truly used all the offense I actually think that they really can do as a duo. But we see them try something new almost all the time when they go into the playoffs. Murray did kind of have like a down year this past playoffs. I think that probably was like a championship high. People kind of have like that next year they kind of just be chilling. But I think when they come back with the 100 this upcoming year, they possibly could do a trade into the middle of the year. Obviously Aaron Gordon fits perfectly, MPJ fits perfectly. They could really trade to get other shooters, other defenders, and I think they would still also be in a great position.
Marz, topic 2, round 2 starts now.
Yeah, this is absolutely cooked. But to answer your inverted pick and rolls question, spoiler alert for the next round, Dirk Nowitzki was doing it in Dallas with Steve Nash, just if anyone's wondering, he was doing those things. Also, Draymond's runs is a pick and roll ball handler, and Steph's the screener quite often too. So they do it as well. But I think I want to harp really on the defensive side of the ball, where Jamal Murray and Jokic are, to be positive, I'll say both neutral to slight negatives on defense. Draymond Green is one of the best defensive players of his era, especially in his prime, which is what I'm talking about. Where Steph Curry was an active off-ball defender and a strong communicator, he struggled on the ball and teams would often mismatch on him. Draymond Green made up for that. That is something Jokic can't do for Jamal Murray. When Jamal Murray gets picked on because of his size, Jokic isn't backline rim protection. When Steph Curry gets picked on for his size, Draymond Green is. When Jamal Murray and Jokic are both in a pick and roll, all they can do is pray and blitz. When Draymond Green is in a pick and roll with Steph, he can play drop, he can switch, he can hedge, he can do everything. He can complement Steph on defense in ways that Jokic can't complement Jamal. And on offense, even though the synergy between Jamal and Jokic is delightful, Draymond Green is a flawed offensive player who is made viable by Steph Curry. When we talk about complementing each other, that's the peak of complementary players. When you're able to make someone flawed look good, that's what you mean by complementing someone. Draymond Green being allowed the freedom to run 4-on-3s or to handle the ball in transition, because Steph can be a point guard who can play away from the ball, is maximizing Draymond Green. How many times have you heard if Draymond Green wasn't in Golden State, he'd be out the league in 5 years? That's complementary. That's complementing each other.
Nice, Marz. MTEL, bring us home.
All right. So in response to that, yes, I do think that is a good version of complementary. Being a complementary player for each other. I think you can do it more ways, just offense to defense. Like in this situation with Jokic and Murray, they complement each other in a very great offensive way. Like one of the best synergies I've seen in quite some time, honestly. Where, if we're being honest, Murray's not necessarily a true point guard, in my opinion. Like in the sense of how people look at traditional point guards. He's a scoring guard. Let's be honest. He's a scoring guard. Jokic is more of the point guard, if we're being honest, for the team. He has the better vision. He has the better playmaking abilities. He has the better skills. I won't say handle, obviously. I think both of them are great closers, though. One thing you do not get with Steph and Draymond. Steph would be the closer for the team. Draymond's just there. You could give the ball to Jokic, let him, play in the post, let him score the way that you need him to do to be able to win games for you, or like they choose to do, you could go to Murray and let him be essentially the Kobe Bryant of the team. Just let him close the games out. They could go to Jokic, but more times than not, they go to Murray, and Murray becomes a different player in the playoffs. I think he cruises towards the regular season, kind of like LeBron has been, accused of doing his whole career. I think Murray tends to do that too, where he just like stop us when we get there. And more times than not, we've been seeing recently when they both play on the court, more times than not, people do not stop them. So I think that's a great sign of them just complimenting each other more.
MTEL, good closing argument. Marz.
I think it's interesting that when you look at what Steph and Dray were able to do together, I mean, I could just point to the championships and all of those things and say they had more success. But we understand there's context. Klay Thompson was there. Denver didn't have a Klay Thompson. Kevin Durant was there. They definitely didn't have a Kevin Durant. But I think it shows something when you look at the team's on-court performance seems to have a bigger dip when Steph is out there without Draymond than when Steph is out there without Kevin Durant. When Kevin Durant seems to make a smaller difference to the on-court production of Golden State than Draymond Green does, there's a clear sign that those two have a synergy that we can't understand. How many times have you seen Draymond throw behind the back DHOs because he knows Steph's curling? Or how many times have two guys gone to Steph and Draymond's finds and cutters left and right? That synergy, that understanding is something that can't be replicated by many other players. Steph's gravity and that allowing Draymond Green to have the freedom to facilitate and get guys involved in offense. Jamal Murray isn't able to do that. Jamal Murray's synergy in the DHO game is great. But Steph Curry is able to be a better spot-up shooter for Draymond Green. He's able to fill the lanes better in transition for Draymond Green. He sets screens for Draymond Green. Jamal Murray's not much of a screener. He is sometimes when they go to their closing lineups, but really that's more so to do with how great Jokic is than it is a tandem, in my humble estimation. Steph and Draymond on both sides of the ball is a tandem. Jamal Murray and Jokic is a lot of Jokic is this great and Jamal Murray is excellent next to him. But Steph and Draymond, I think, is the epitome of complementing each other, whereas I think Jamal Murray and Jokic is a bit less of that, in my humble estimation.
Woo! Round 2, round 3. Topic 2 has concluded. Run the polls. If you're here live, make sure you vote. If you're not, vote in the comments.
L. Ron, by the way.
L. Ron. All right. We got topic 3, and that is the GOAT. The GOAT. Dirk Nowitzki versus Carmelo Anthony. Who is the better scorer? Whoever has Dirk Nowitzki, don't let me down.
Yeah, JD is definitely unbiased. Definitely.
I'm very unbiased in this. I am also not voting, so I will leave it to the chat. All right. MTEL went first last round. Marz, you are going to kick us up. Kick us up is fire. Kick us off. Time starts when you do.
Okay. I'm gonna start this statistically like I did in round 1. I thought round 1 is my stats round, and we'll move on from that. In their Melo is the less efficient scorer, the worst shooter, and is worse in the playoffs. I'm gonna explain why statistically. Melo's most efficient high volume scoring season is 2013, where he was 32 points per 75 on plus 2.5 relative true shooting. His best postseason series is 25.8 points per 75 on plus 6.6 relative true shooting. His best postseason run is 28.5 points per 75 on plus 2.8 relative true shooting. Dirk's best regular season is 27 points on plus 7 true shooting, and his best postseason is 30.5 on plus 7.8. I'm going to list you a bunch of series that Dirk has all more efficient than Melo's best ever efficient series. 0-2 versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, where Dirk Nowitzki was 29 on plus 17. 2011 versus the reigning champion defending Los Angeles Lakers, where he was 28 on plus 16. 2011 versus KD in the very next round, 32 on plus 14. 06 versus the Spurs, the number 1 defense, where he was 25 on plus 14. 09 versus the Denver Nuggets and Carmelo Anthony, where he was 32 on plus 12. 2010 versus the Spurs again, where he was 28 on plus 12. 03 versus Rasheed Wallace and the Portland Trailblazers, where he was 28.5 on plus 11. 06 versus Pau Gasol and the number 2 ranked defense, Memphis Grizzlies, where he was 33 points on plus 11 relative true shooting. That's just a bunch of series Dirk has better than Melo's most efficient series ever. Dirk was the more efficient scorer, and I'm going to get into why he's the better shooter, better post player, better off-ball player in round 2 and 3.
MTEL, cook that fraud and let him know why Carmelo Anthony is a better scorer than Dirk.
All right, so that was a good start. I almost low-key wish I could have been the one to start with the statistics. So I don't want to be an echo chamber. So where I'm gonna go with this, let's talk about styles of play. Melo has a style of play that we all know has been conducive to being favorable in multiple styles of basketball. We talk about him as a FIBA player as well as an NBA player. Some of us consider him to be one of the best FIBA basketball players of all time. You know, outside of him and KD is like 1 and 2 when you just talk about FIBA rules. I think that's interesting that his play style can translate so well to different styles of play. Where we can call him inefficient in the NBA, you know, they play a more physical brand of basketball when you watch FIBA play, if we're being honest. And somehow in a more physical style of play, he's actually playing better. I think a lot of signs of that has to do with the fact that Melo's style of play, honestly, just a very productive way of how to play an offensive game in basketball. Yes, I know he did used to take a lot of long twos, but hey, they play from that era. I think Melo could have been a great 3-point shooter if he focused more on being a 3-point shooter than a mid-range shooter. He has a very good post-up game. We know he's a very strong player. A lot of players have came out and talked about, hey, I ain't gonna lie, when I'm going against Melo, I gotta put ice packs on myself because dude is strong. He is deceptive, but he's a very strong player, very physical. I think his game just translates to more styles of basketball than Dirk, in my opinion. And I'm gonna start with that.
Marz, pour honey on my goat, man.
Yeah, I think Dirk as an overall player, I think is underrated. I think people remember the 2011 run because that's the championship, and people aren't going back and watching the 01 Mavericks or the 02 Mavericks. Dirk Nowitzki used to be an athlete. Dirk Nowitzki used to be a guy who would attack from the perimeter and get to the rim and finish. That's what Dirk Nowitzki used to be. He transformed his game. That ability to go from a face-up perimeter big to a slower post-up, strong, grinder out big is something that gets slept on all the time with Dirk Nowitzki. Go watch him in 01 and go watch him in 2011. It's two different players. You may see number 41 in Dallas, but that's two different guys who are both putting up an efficient 25 in the regular season and postseason. He's shown that he could do it as a face-up guy, as a guy who's getting to the rim. He could do it as a post-up guy. He could do it as a guy who's shooting threes. He could do it as a guy who's in the mid-range. Dirk Nowitzki from 03 to 2011 shot 46% on 2-point jump shots in an era where teams were scoring 105 points per possession. You know how crazy it is to have someone who can generate you efficient half-court offense on demand because they just don't miss mid-range jumpers. For reference, Melo shot 40% from 06 to 2014. That's his prime scoring season, 40%. Dirk Nowitzki was 38% from three in that stretch. Melo was 35%. Dirk Nowitzki was 89% from the line in that stretch. Carmelo was 83%. Everywhere across the board, Dirk Nowitzki shot the ball better. Melo was strong as hell, but guess who was strong too? Dirk Nowitzki. You couldn't get up under him. You couldn't bother his shot. When he's releasing it, you know that one-legged fade is unstoppable. There was no game plan you could have for Dirk Nowitzki once he figured out how to leverage his strength, leverage his size, and wouldn't settle for outside jump shots from three. When he realized that my sweet spot is 10 to 16, whenever he got that ball, it was automatic for Dallas, and that's why their offenses were always great.
Mtel, let him know about Carmelo.
Okay. So we know that Melo has won the scoring title before. Dirk has never won that. Yeah, he's been a very good scorer, I would say. If you talk about Melo's efficiencies, I can see where you come from with that. I think with Melo, the thing with his career, he is a volume shooter, and we know how it is with volume shooters. They got to get shots up to like really be their best. I think Melo, when you get him in a rhythm of being a player, I think he's actually one of the more unstoppable scoring players, even more so than Dirk. I know for for their careers, obviously Melo averaged more points per game. He averaged 22, Dirk averaged 20. I ain't gonna lie, if you go career for career, it's relatively very similar to each other. They're within 2% from the field and from the 3-point line if you go off their career. I would say with Melo, it's just I don't know. It's something about when you watch him play. At times, he just looks more like that guy to the point where he even stole an MVP vote from LeBron in a year where people say LeBron should have went unanimous from MVP voting. He just has something about his game that just like draws people in. Where him as a scorer, you just love to see him play basketball. Like he was a fun player for a lot of people, and he was very physical, very strong, and he just was a great talent. Honestly, that's really just what people look at Melo and see.
Round 3, Marz, this is your last round. Please don't disappoint me.
I actually agree. Melo is one of the more aesthetically pleasing players. I will always say I've never understood the mixture of size, strength, and speed he had. That first step was ridiculous. I'm not going to deny how good of a scorer Melo was, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the postseason. Dirk Nowitzki scoring in the postseason just translated better than Melo's did. Now, that could be my opinion, but respectfully, it's more so a fact. In their playoff peaks, which happened at the same time, by the way, from 09 to 2011, Dirk Nowitzki averaged 30 points per 75 on +9 relative true shooting. He played against a bunch of elite defenses in that stretch, including the Spurs, including the Lakers, including the Heat. He played against a bunch of elite defenses and put up 30 points per 75 on +9 true shooting. Melo in that same stretch matched him pretty similarly in volume, 28.5 points per 75, but was only a +2 relative true shooting. That's where the difference is. They both operated in similar areas of the floor, the mid-range, trying to get to the rim, didn't shoot a bunch of threes, but could make them. But Dirk was just way more effective. His ability to chisel out position and get deep position and make shots over the top of defenders, couldn't really get bothered from contests, didn't take as many bad shots, and by virtue of him being a 7-footer, Dirk Nowitzki was like, we see what KD is? Dirk Nowitzki was like the prototype. That's what he was. You can't get near his shot. If he gets into the mid-range, it's unstoppable, and you just have to live with the result. Contest high and hope he misses. That's all it was for Dirk Nowitzki. There was no game planning. Teams realized that when he got to his peak, and that's why he ended up going on that Cinderella run in 11, because you couldn't stop Dirk Nowitzki.
Chat, ignore those premature polls because Mtel is not taking us away yet. Put him in the fryer and cook him, Mtel.
All right. So for my last round, where I'm gonna end off is saying, I know Marz was talking about Dirk Nowitzki's strength. He talked about Dirk Nowitzki, younger Dirk, and yeah, I understand that. He was strong in the sense of him as a player, but I mean, how's how do you really measure strength when you are a 7 foot player that didn't play center? Like he was playing power forward. I believe he had time where he played center, but more so than not, kind of remind me of AD. He preferred playing a power forward spot. That's the spot where we know him from being the best at. We call him one of the best power forwards of all time. I think being a 7 footer and not playing center, I think that shows signs of something. What that shows, hey, I'll let y'all choose what y'all want to call that. But I think the fact that Melo has been moved around a lot, you could technically play him on a lot of different roles. I actually think Melo could play your center over Dirk, and it will work better. To be honest with you, just his style of play. Ironically enough, I know we talk about him like his offense and defense. Again, I really want to harp on the FIBA rules only because I got to see a different side of Melo that growing up I didn't get to see this side of Melo. I just used to look at him just a shot chucker. But I watched him play in the FIBA. I saw how he plays in the team setting when you put him in a more physical brand of basketball. I was like, if the NBA was set up that way, you would see that more with his game.
Run the polls. All right. Any last words before I send you guys off and we roll intermission?
Elron.
Elron.
I
I
ain't gonna
agree.
lie, this was not the bestest of matchups. That was very unfavorable.
All right, y'all.
Elron.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you guys so much. Congratulations on the regular season. Good luck in the
All right,
playoffs.